What's up, you guys? It's Gavin here, back with another fantasy football video. Today, we're going to be diving into my first post-NFL draft rookie mock draft here on the SFS channel with team landing spots known now and having all of that extra information for what the outlooks are for these players. So, first and foremost, if you guys are new around here, make sure to drop down, click the like button, and subscribe to the SFS channel. Also, if you're new around here, make sure to check out the SFS community Discord server. The invite link to that is in the description of today's episode, and that's how you can be featured as a part of our next mock draft here on the channel. We're going to be making these somewhat of a regular occurrence here, at least one at bare minimum per week going forward for the rest of this offseason, all kinds of different formats. But I post the invite links to those mocks on my Twitter account and in the Discord server where you can interact with me and ask me a bunch of other questions. So make sure to go check that out. Again, the links are in the description of today's episode. And without further ado, let's get started. Alrighty, here we go. We're going to be kicking off today's mock draft. So we've got a few empty spots at the top of the board, but we did get a fairly decent turnout for today's episode. I would love it, again, if you guys would join that community Discord server, and we can help improve the quality of these episodes by having real players drafting for these picks here, as opposed to the sleeper ADP, which has been improved and updated post-draft. But again, it's obviously better to have real people in here. So the first few picks off the board, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, the two top running backs in this class, were the first selections. Then we've got Treylon Burks as the first wide receiver off the board. A bit of an interesting selection there, along with Chris Olave at the 1-4. So Drake London falls. I know Hoagie7919 there is absolutely loving that pick falling into his lap. So very quickly here, I'll have some analysis so we're not flying through today's 5 rounds too fast. But we do have the 1-7 draft selection here. So really the 3 names I'm looking at with this pick are Jamison Williams, Christian Watson, and Sky Moore. At this current point in time, I'm not going to overvalue James Cook too severely at this point in time, just because I think that there's a very real case to be made that he's not going to be a 3-down workhorse back. However, I do think he adds a lot of efficiency and upside in the receiving game, so that's something very interesting to watch here. But what is interesting is the order in which the receivers went off the board in today's mock draft. So again, Treylon Burks is the first wide receiver to go. He is my wide receiver 2 in this draft class, after Garrett Wilson, who's my wide receiver 1, who fell down to the 1-6 there. Personally, I am not an overly large Drake London fan. I do really like the physical traits he brings to the table, but the landing spot for me is not the most favorable situation. It's something that I think I would have liked to see play out a different way. Obviously, having Marcus Mariota in the short term is not the best quarterback situation. So that's fine, though. It's likely that that's going to change within the next season or two. Maybe Desmond Ridder's that guy. Maybe he's not. But we'll make Jamison Williams the pick there at the 1-7. What I love about Jamison Williams personally is that I think he has the skill set and the athleticism to overcome his situation. So this is kind of an ugly draft board, to be honest, across all leagues, not this one in particular, or you can have your opinions about that. But this draft class in general, rookie drafts are ugly. It's kind of a bloodbath out there. You didn't really get an overly large abundance of perfect fits, if you will. You've got your Christian Watsons and your Sky Moores that did get those fantastic landing spots, but outside of that, there's a lot of question or a lot of debate that can be had about those draft picks and where they ended up going. You know, Chris Olave had a nice situation with a big arm quarterback, but he's still got MT in house. And Jameis Winston is not necessarily the most precise passer. So, for each one of these guys, there's an imperfection in that situation. Again, though, Jamison Williams is a guy who, kind of like a Tua Tagovailoa combination with Jalen Waddle last year, they were able to implement him into the offense in a way to get him a volume of passes underneath and get those playmakers out in space. And I think the Lions can use Williams in a similar fashion. Jared Goff is not someone that we typically think of as a highly coveted downfield passer, but he is someone who I trust in the short and intermediate game to distribute the football at a high level. So I'm not worried at all about Jamison Williams. there is the potential that within the next couple of seasons here, definitely before the end of Jamison Williams' rookie contract, you'd expect to see a new face in that quarterback room and potentially leading that Lions franchise. But really nice draft for the Lions. Again, not too worried about that situation for Williams there. Now we got to start looking at the draft board here at the 1-7. So Kenny Pickett, this is a 1 QB league. I should have prefaced that right off the bat. However, it is up on the screen there. So Kenny Pickett, the first quarterback off the board, obviously heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot of question about his overall upside with that team. However, I do think he has a very safe floor. The 2.6 is a fair value for him. In a 2 QB league, you might see him creep into the first round, but there's definitely a lot to be said about that level of upside that he brings to the table, because I think it is fairly limited. He doesn't have an elite arm talent or elite arm strength, but I do think he landed in the perfect situation for himself as a quarterback to grow and develop in a system, obviously, where he grew up at the University of Pittsburgh, sharing facilities with the Steelers. They've seen him up close and personal. So I'll just kind of cover the picks that happened in between this selection. I do have my eye on which player I would like to take off the board next year. Rachaad White went at the 112. You've got Isaiah Spiller, another running back going there. Those situations, I think, are players that could find themselves in roles with their team, whether that's Rachaad White and an aging Leonard Fournette, or Isaiah Spiller, taking a hold of that number 2 position in LA and being a really highly coveted handcuff running back in that Chargers offense. John Mechie, a receiver I really like. David Bell. Alex Pierce, someone I'm not super high on, but has potential. With this pick here, I'm actually going to go with Damian Pierce. I think at the 2.7, it's a fairly good value, if not an excellent value for a player who was Pro Football Focus's highest graded running back in college football this past season. I was scrolling through Twitter and looking through comps. There's a fantastic Dynasty community on Twitter. I'm trying to grow a lot on that platform. So if you would, it'd be greatly appreciated if you would go follow me at Sizzle Fantasy. Again, that would be very, very helpful. It's a fantastic community there on Twitter, though, for the Dynasty community as a whole. There's a lot of good information on there. And I've been seeing a lot of people today talking about him as a nastier version of Mark Ingram, which is something I think is pretty cool to think about. A physical player who has the size and ability to be potentially a 3-down back for the Texans immediately as this season. I mean, his barriers to entry are just Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead at this current point in time. 5'10", 216 pounds. He does have that workhorse build and, again, the skill set to be able to produce. So as someone who is kind of a Marlon Mack, I don't want to call myself a Marlon Mack truther, but I am someone that believes in his talent as a pure rusher. I don't know how immediate this transition would be for Pierce to get on the field, but I do think that in the back half of the season, there is some opportunity here to draft a team starting running back, and then for a draft class that doesn't have the most highly coveted group at that position, that's something I really like to see. So George Pickens down at the 2-1 was somebody that I wanted to talk about as a player whose landing spot I don't love too much. I recently posted a YouTube short about George Pickens, so go check that out if you haven't already. But essentially, I love him as a player. I think he can be a fantastic X receiver for a football team, but I worry about the crowded skill position room that the Steelers have right now, and the 380 total touches plus that Najee Harris had last season. I just don't know how much volume there is for Pickens. I think he's going to have to be uber efficient this season, or even in the first 2 seasons, to be able to really step a hold and take control of that offense. Unless we see some significant changes with the schematics offensively from the Big Ben Steelers. He was late in his career. They couldn't really throw the football downfield all that much. I think there's some limitations there. Deontay Johnson is going to get his work. I think that Chase Claypool is still a threat. He is, he had a lot of injuries, got dinged up a lot last season, but he's a talented player with a great physical frame and a lot of attributes you love to see. And then again, Kenny Pickett. I mean, how much are they going to want to throw at the rookie quarterback? They had a high volume of rushing attempts and completions to Najee Harris. He caught over 70 passes last year, so a lot of stuff to consider there. We had a running back run here at the end of the second round. Tyron Davis-Price, one of the more intriguing running back names that could potentially make a big splash in the 49ers backfield next year. Brian Robinson got some high draft capital from the Washington football team, although I think that the 3 running backs right there, Antonio Gibson, Robinson, and J.D. McKissic might kind of decapitate each other in fantasy value. Tyler Algier, someone who's not a super explosive running back, but does have a really nice physical skill set, and I think can be a thumper, maybe one of the more pure running backs on that Falcons roster. Also has a really nice opportunity to get on the field early in his career, 5th-round pick. So not great draft capital, but a chance. We did see, players like undrafted free agent James Robinson get his opportunity in 2020. Last year, 6th-round pick Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana got his shot. So draft capital is king to an extent, but sometimes you will see outliers in that. One of my favorite picks I'm seeing going off the board right now, so you do see Ritter and Malik Willis go, is Zamir White to Huddy 15 at the 3-3. I think that he is a fantastic player that could get the opportunity. I think one of my favorite sleepers is going to fall into my lap here at the 3-7. I would be super excited if he falls to me here, but we'll see what Cody ends up doing here. So Zamir White is someone who is an absolute bust. Once he breaks through the line of scrimmage and gets to the linebacker and secondary level of the defense, he is a thumper and has 4.4 speed in open space. He is quite the physical specimen. And with the Raiders declining Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option, there's a very real shot that the door is open for the team to move on from him next season. If that's the case, and Zamir White impresses in camp, has good flashes in the opportunities he's given this year, you could get some really nice utility out of Zamir White and potentially have a team's lead running back in the 2023 season, or as early as the 2023 season, by making a simple 3rd-round draft pick here in the 2022 draft. So something to keep your eye on. I also made a YouTube short about Zamir White, so go check that out. Also, if you're enjoying today's episode, please leave a like and click that subscribe button. Again, it helps me out a ton. We're trying to grow the SFS community here. And if you want to be in next episode's mock draft, join the community Discord server. The invite link is in the description. It's our next pick. The player I like is still on the board here. Fell into our lap at the 3-7. That is Khalil Shakir. Again, another player I made a YouTube short about. Been pumping those out a lot recently. You give me a situation with a player who I really liked on tape. He immediately popped off my screen when I was going through this year's prospect class. And I think he fits perfectly into the slot build for this Buffalo Bills offense. You had Cole Beasley depart in free agency. Jamison Crowder is technically penciled in as a starter. I would expect him to be that role player for most of this season. And then you've also got an Isaiah McKenzie above Shakir on the depth chart. But long-term moving forward, I get a 6-foot, 195-pound player who moves really well in space. He's shifty, reads his blockers well. All right, guys. Well, Sleeper just had a midlife crisis in the middle of recording today's video. Unfortunately, we have members of the SFS community in here and whatnot, so I unfortunately am not really able to completely start this over. But basically, the whole 3rd round after my selection ended up getting auto-picked because, like I said, their servers crashed or something. And the physical users were not able to make their selection. So I'll walk you through what I was planning on doing. So I was basically leading up to drafting Khalil Shakir at the 3-7 pick, but I got, as you can see, auto-drafted Matt Corral, which I'm not super excited about. Obviously, Eric, who knows my love for Khalil Shakir, scooped him up at the 3-10 because he's drafting off of his phone right now behind the green screen. And the app apparently didn't crash, but the website did. So I get Matt Corral, essentially a development quarterback piece for the Panthers. Eventually, he will probably surpass Sam Darnold, or at least get a shot to draft for the team. To play quarterback for the team. But he wasn't invested super highly in terms of draft capital. He was picked after Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, so the 4th QB off the board, but he still went prior to Sam Howell. So you've got some things working in his favor. He is a playmaking quarterback, but at the end of the day, again, I definitely would prefer to have Khalil Shakir on this team. I'm going to spend some time after the board concludes here because we're now in round 5. You see I was auto-drafted Tyler Beatty there at the 4-7. Don't mind that pick at all. As the player who could potentially be the best receiving back for the Ravens offense. I think he has some PPR utility there. It's going to be a committee. There's going to be multiple backs getting their way onto the football field. So That's fine. After I make this pick, though, I'm going to go back, analyze the board, give you guys some, again, analysis of the picks that were made, talk through the situations of some of these players because obviously I'm frustrated that Sleeper crashed and I'm not able to re-record this video. So I apologize about that, and hopefully Sleeper doesn't have another midlife crisis in the middle of a video. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in at this point in the video still and who participated in today's mock draft. I appreciate you guys very much so. Looking through the board, okay, I think I see the name I would like to take, that being Isaiah Likely. You can see the star on him there. Eric Ezukama is an interesting name as a guy who was a 4th-round pick for the Miami Dolphins. However, you've got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson. Devontae Parker did get shipped out of town, but still 3 legitimate players that he's probably going to have a tough time overcoming in the depth chart. So I would rather take kind of the handcuffed tight end, if you will, quote unquote, for the Baltimore Ravens, someone who I expect to be out and involved in the receiving game, although it will be playing second fiddle, a big second fiddle to Mark Andrews. If something were to happen there, I like Isaiah Likely's skill set. He's a physical player out in space, and in terms of being a receiver, not a fantastic blocker, and is someone who has athleticism to make plays as a receiving tight end. So I don't hate how the 4th and 5th round ended up turning out for me. Isaiah Likely in the 5th round is someone who I'd love to draft there, or in the late 4th every single time. Tyler Beatty, again, PPR guy that I think can have some value there. But Matt Corral should have been Khalil Shakir for me. I'll talk through some of my favorite names. Essentially, we were gone from, and you missed out on the draft board from my pick there at the 3-7 all the way until really my pick just about at the 4-7. Or excuse me, I think the board was actually gone until my 5th round pick almost. So it had just passed me in the 4th round. So I'll talk through the 3rd and 4th round here as the draft is kind of wrapping up here. Greg Dulich is someone really interesting. I'll pull up his player card here for the Denver Broncos. You've got a player who has higher draft capital invested into him than you see with Albert O. However, I do think that Albert O is a bit more of an impressive prospect in terms of his 4.49 40-yard dash and being 6'6" tall. I just think he has better physical intangibles, but I do think that the 2 tight end set will be very viable here. I do think Dulich will get his way in the field, but there are other tight ends I do like better in this draft class, including Cade Otton, who went all the way down at the 5-1. I would rather have that player in the Tampa Bay scheme, potentially replacing Rob Gronkowski if he decides not to commit to football this year. Hassan Haskins here at the 4-1, not someone I'm crazy about. He is technically going to be the handcuff to Derrick Henry, though, so that's valuable in itself. But outside of that, I don't see too much utility there. Jeremy Ruckert, someone I like as a flyer tight end. You never know who's going to hit. I loved his tape as a receiver at Ohio State. Romeo Doubs, I think he'll struggle to get on the field, but there is the opportunity to catch passes from Aaron Rodgers, 4th-round pick for the Packers this year. Talented, but definitely not a guarantee. Kyron Williams, the 4-4, could potentially be the 3rd down pass-catching back in the Rams committee-style system. Starting to, fade my Cam Akers take a little bit here, as that backfield now has Darrell Henderson and Kyron Williams as a part of that. Jerome Ford to Cleveland, someone who I like as a player, potential to be a 3-down back. However, you're playing behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Your opportunities are going to be sparse. Keontae Ingram, that's a pick I love to see there by Cody at the 4-6. Very, very quality player playing behind James Conner, has the opportunity to fill that number 2 RB role in Arizona and be a very viable handcuff. Taekwon Thornton at the 4-8. Speed demon catching passes from a precision passer in Mac Jones. Ty Chandler is going to be, stuck behind Madison and Cook, although I do love his frame and speed out in space. Ballinger's got a chance to step up the depth chart. Daniel Ballinger here for the Giants. They did end up letting Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph walk, so potential for him to get out there and on the field. A lot of tight ends. For this being a class, we barely talked about the tight end position. There are a lot of guys that could step up to the plate. Kelvin Austin as well, a guy who's probably a gadget player, very, very small, undersized, 5'9", 162, but, he has some nice traits to be a quality player, and the Steelers draft wide receiver very well. So while there aren't going to be a ton of opportunities and looks for him, he does have some talent that he brings to the table And then here in the 5th round, it's kind of a crapshoot, but Cade Otton is probably the steal of the 5th round, if you ask me, to the CPU there. Snoop Connor goes here at the 5-4. Justin Ross, an interesting pick from the University of Clemson, talked about being potentially a first-round NFL draft pick, but he had a lot of injuries, and those ultimately just ended up becoming very troublesome to NFL GM. So he went undrafted. The Chiefs picked him up, though. So if he can find his way onto the field, lots of potential there. So and then the Mr. Irrelevant of this Dynasty draft was Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant of the actual NFL draft, which is quite funny. So once again, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I apologize big time. I'm very sorry for the sleeper fantasy issue that we had there. It's not really my fault, but it was annoying because it affected today's video. So I apologize for that. But again, make sure to drop down and join the community Discord server. The invite link to that is in the description of today's video and every video here. Go follow me on Twitter as well. And obviously subscribe to the channel if you're new around here and drop a like before you head on out. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time. Peace out.